The Constellation Group Ride is less than 3 weeks away now. After a bit of a break, I'm back on the bike. Just a little warm up ahead of the ride. Stay tuned for a little bit of an update. I'm Roger. This is Roger Rides for AT. So let's start with a little bit of a bike update. I'm riding the Ribble today. That's the bike I took with me to Switzerland. That's coming up to 3 months ago now, 2.5 months at least. Since that ride, I've hardly touched this bike, to be honest. I have replaced the front derailleur cable. That sorted out the shifting. So much for the bike shop in Paris telling me that the shifter itself was damaged. It was a cable issue. I say a cable issue. I've also replaced the outer cables and the barrel adjuster, as they were a bit worn, so I suspect what was happening, I was trying to change gear, it was crushing the outer cable rather than operating the cable fully. Anyway, fingers crossed, that's sorted. Certainly I've ridden only 2 or 3 miles yesterday, and I'm only 4 miles into this ride today. But first signs are, it's fixed the problem. Second bike update. I had a clicking sound, intermittent, but it was getting worse on that ride. I've had this for probably 18 months, something like that. It started not long after changing the bottom bracket bearing. The previous one was very worn. I've been through loads of other changes, and really the only thing left was that there was a problem with that bearing. Maybe it just got dirt into it or something fairly early on in its life, I don't know, but put a new bracket on yesterday. As I say, not far into the ride today, but first signs are promising. Certainly no clicking, feels a smooth movement. So in short, I have a fully operational bike. Fingers crossed it'll stay that way. So as I say, this is the first, apart from sort of a road test ride, it's the first ride on this bike since I got back from Switzerland. Well, over 2 months ago, let's put it that way. And that's from when I got back. Or about 2 months ago. Whatever. A while back. It's taken me a while to sort this bike out. To get round to sorting the bike out, to be fair. Other updates. A couple of weeks ago, I'm assuming this is the cause, I had a small cut in the thumb on my left hand. Must have got an infection of some description into it. As a couple of days later, it was swollen up. Really painful. Too painful to hold the handlebars, let alone the pressure against the thumb of changing gear and any other actions. It's only now, 2 weeks later, that it's starting to feel better. It's still a bit painful, but it's certainly bearable. So that's near enough 2 weeks of not riding. I did go out once last weekend for a short ride, just to see how it was and just for the sake of getting out. But fingers crossed, I'm past the worst of that now, and over the next week or so, hopefully sooner, the pain and the last of the swelling will go away. So today is the last day of August. August normally for me is a decent mileage month. Even without any trips or anything like that, I would expect to hit 1,300 miles in the month. This month, as of yesterday, I was on just 400. Hi. Now, part of that is down to the best part of 2 weeks of not cycling because of the hand injury, but also early in the month I had to make a last-minute trip to the States for a week. Sad circumstances, but it was an enjoyable trip all the same. Good to catch up with family over there. But that's another week off the bike. So this month I've had 3 weeks of not cycling. So it's going to be a hit to the annual mileage, but who cares? It's the way it goes. Now, the more observant of you may have noticed I'm wearing a different shirt today. Jersey, if you'd rather. I call them shirts. This is one that I had custom made for the trip to Switzerland. Didn't arrive until 2 weeks after I was back home. So the idea of having custom gear for the trip didn't work, but I'll continue to make use of the shirts now that I've actually got them. I might do a separate video about the poor service level, shall we say, the slow delivery. I don't know, I'll see. Might do that at some stage. Right, just passing the graveyard of Turvey Church. Spotted that on a recent GCN video. Was covering Dan Lloyd doing I think it was 350 kilometre ride, Manchester to London. The route that was taken for that covered about 12 miles of my daily commute, and what really made it obvious to me watching the video was a shot of him passing that graveyard. Thought, I know where that is. Looked in a bit more detail. As I say, covered about 12 miles of my route, actually passing my house on his way to London. Just a little side note. I wasn't around at the time. I think on the day of that ride, I just rolled into Switzerland, or it was the first full day in Switzerland. One of the two. Can't remember which now. Just a little comment on that Dan Lloyd stroke GCN video. He did about 350 kilometers in one day. When I went to Switzerland at the same time, I did 3,000 kilometers in 22 days. Okay, daily mileage, slightly less than half of what Dan did. But bear in mind, he's also an ex-professional cyclist. And to do, what is it, near enough 9 times the distance, which is what I did, for an aging amateur, it sort of brings it home, I suppose, how much of an achievement my ride actually was. Just a thought. So I mentioned in the intro, it's less than 3 weeks till the Constellation Group Cycle Ride. That for me is the second of my 2 fundraising rides in aid of Action for AT this year. First was the warm-up, the Swiss trip. As I mentioned, 3,000 kilometers, 22 days. The group ride this year, slightly different format. I've mentioned it in previous videos, but in case you've not seen those, or as a reminder, this year, slightly different format. Instead of the usual 3 days, it's just a 1-day ride. Riders of various ability from throughout all parts of the company, well, the group of companies. We'll be riding 100 miles from this year's base just outside Oxford around the Cotswolds. Now there's a couple of training rides ahead of that for those who want an excuse to get some miles under the belt, or get a bit of practice at riding in a group, or simply just to meet some of the others on the ride. Those 2 training rides are the next 2 Saturdays. Next Saturday in the Surrey Hills, we're meeting up at Box Hill, and that one is, I think, about a 40-mile ride around the area. And the following Saturday is from Bingham in Nottinghamshire. I think that's likely to be about 50 miles, a little bit flatter than the Surrey ride. I'll be doing both, at least that's the plan at the moment. I'll take the bike in the car down to Surrey this year. Last year I cycled down there. I've used up pretty much all of my holiday this year on the Swiss trip and the group ride. But I will take a day of holiday to ride to Bingham on the Friday or somewhere in the area, and then I'll ride back home on the Sunday. For the group ride, as I say, it's just outside Oxford. That's on the Thursday after the Bingham training ride. My plan for that is to ride to the ride base on the Wednesday and back home on the Friday. As I say, that's the second of my 2 rides in aid of Action for AT. I think the Swiss trip would have worked as a reasonable warm-up. I'll put a link on the screen in case you wish to give your support. On the subject of which, a very big thank you to all those who have already given support to the fundraising efforts. So just one other note on my Swiss trip. I mentioned how it compared to Dan's one-day charity ride. Another comparison, the Tour de France. That's over a 3-week period, so that's pretty similar. I think this year's tour was 3,300 kilometers, something like that. So it's not massively different from the 3,000 that I did. What is different though, they're professionals, it's fully supported, they've got however many people in the teams, mechanical support and the like, looking after their nutritional needs as well as the bike needs. They're on lightweight bikes. They're not on fully laden, carrying everything around with them bikes. They're on proper racing gear. Food for thought, isn't it? Once again, something makes my achievement something of an achievement, not just a ride, a massive trip. So to wrap up, less than 3 weeks to the Constellation Group Ride. After a couple of weeks of mostly off the bike, back on 2 wheels, feeling okay. Ahead of the group ride, a couple of training rides. I'll be doing both, and I plan to put a video out of both of those as well. So, watch this space. Thank you for watching. And, well, the first of those rides is next Saturday, so see you in a week's time. Well, I won't. YouTube doesn't work that way. You can see me in a week's time,